When we talk about the most famous aircraft of all time, one name always comes up: the Spitfire. This British fighter is a legend, and that is not just because of how many movies it has been featured in. The Spitfire really was an amazing plane. That's why people still talk about it over 82 years after its introduction. In this video, we're going to answer the question, how did the Spitfire become an aviation masterpiece? In order to understand what made the Spitfire so great, you have to go back to the beginning. In the early 1930s, the British Air Ministry wanted to replace the Hawker, Fury and the Hawker 81 as the main fighter for the Royal Air Force. What they needed was something fast with a lot of maneuverability. But there was another requirement that was a little more difficult to define. They needed a plane that could inspire the pilots to get in it and fight. On January 5, 1934, the Air Ministry gave the contract to manufacture a new fighter to the Supermarine Company. Their design team came up with a prototype that would have been fast and agile, but it didn't quite have what it took to wow the British officials. So they went back to the drawing board. What they came up with was something truly special. The new plane would have elliptical wings, which not only looked cool, but also gave the pilot better visibility. It would be powered by a brand new Rolls-Royce engine, the first of its kind, with a 2-speed supercharger. That meant that the plane would have incredible agility at lower speeds, but it would also be able to perform well at higher altitudes. It would be the perfect plane for Britain's upcoming challenge. The Spitfire had its first test flight on March 31st, 1936. The test pilot, Joseph Summers, was so impressed that he said, "It was the best aeroplane I had ever flown," and the British officials agreed. They were so impressed with the Spitfire's performance that they ordered 310 of them in June of 1936. By September, the first 30 Spitfires were ready for action. They were sent to France to be part of the British Expeditionary Air Force. Their job was to defend France and Belgium against the Germans, but we all know that the Germans eventually won that battle. So the Spitfires were sent home. This is when the Spitfires really became legends. On July 10, 1940, the Germans launched a massive air attack against Britain. They were hoping to knock Britain out of the war in a matter of days. But they had forgotten about one thing. The British had the best pilots in the world, and they had the best planes. The Battle of Britain had begun. For the next 6 months, the Germans and the British fought each other in the skies above Britain. It was the most intense air battle in history. And the Spitfire was at the center of it all. These planes were flying at speeds of over 300 miles per hour. They were diving toward the ground at 3,000 feet per minute. They were turning inside of 2 and a 2Gs. It was incredible. But even with all of this power, the Spitfire wasn't invincible. In fact, during the Battle of Britain, 1,915 Spitfires were either damaged or destroyed. But for every Spitfire that was lost, 2 Germans were taken down. By the end of the battle, 51% of all German planes that were shot down had been brought down by the Spitfire. The rest had been taken down by the Hurricane. As impressive as that sounds, that's not why the Spitfire is still considered to be a masterpiece today. There are 2 reasons why this plane is still considered to be the greatest ever built. The first is that it was ahead of its time. When you look around the Spitfire, you can see that it's much smoother than other planes from the same era. It was designed to cut through the air with as little resistance as possible. That's why it's so fast. But it's also why it looks so good. The lines of the Spitfire are so elegant. It's like a swan compared to the boxy planes of the 1930s. The second reason why the Spitfire is still considered to be a masterpiece is because of what it represents. The Battle of Britain was the first time that an entire country had been defended by a group of elite pilots and their planes. Before that, if a country was attacked, it was usually by a large army on the ground. The Battle of Britain changed everything. It showed that the future of war would be fought in the skies. And it showed that a small group of highly trained people could make the difference between victory and defeat. And that's why the Spitfire is still considered to be a masterpiece today. The plane that was designed to be the best ended up becoming a legend. I hope you enjoyed this episode of our show. If you did, be sure to check out our other videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.